In spiritual knowledge, we're taught that we are part of everything, a whole, and that we are one with everything. But how come I can still feel so alone?
Essentially, we are treading this path alone. This is a lonely and lonesome journey. And it is interesting that actually at the very first stages of awakening to who we truly are, that loneliness might become even more acute. The sensation of being withdrawn from the world and from the others may seem more pronounced. So it's like a paradox. On one hand, we feel connected to our innermost self more than ever, through whatever practice we've been doing, through whatever revelations, through whatever openings that we've experienced. Yet that in itself is often accompanied by the feeling of being alone, of being, as it were, detached from our day-to-day connections, our relatives, our friends, our most intimate companions. And the reasons for that are basically based in the fact that this journey is basically a progressive internalization. So as we internalize, we feel more and more connected to our innermost being. Yet that in itself often widens the gap between the world out there and the world in here. So it's what we experience deep within and what we experience out in the world may feel as being pronounced with the contrast of it. So when we go inside, we feel more connected. We feel more connected to ourselves, and likewise we feel more connected to the outer world. Yet often when we come out of that place within and interact with the others at the early stages of this process of internalization, of this process of awakening, we often feel that this sense of loneliness is more pronounced. And as I said, that the reason for that is because during this process of internalization, the gap between the inner and the outer may become more pronounced. There is more contrast. Even when we experience inner revelations, all these sensations of being one with ourselves, the world may feel, the world out there, may feel as a different place. Often some seekers, they try to dismiss the world out there altogether based on some kind of assumption that the world is unreal, as it were. The world is, this kind of grand illusion, the concept of Maya that come into place. And that may be understood by the meditator, by the seeker, that that's how it is experienced. I'm feeling aloof to the world, that means the world is not real. The world is as if experienced through some kind of screen of aloofness. But that's not the full picture. It's a temporary picture, it's a temporary phenomenon. And we're not going to jump to the conclusive stages of awakening or process of self-realization, because everyone will progress on this path according to their own gifts and limitations, according to their own status. But what is important to understand, that feeling of being alone is not to be discarded. That feeling of loneliness is not something to be afraid of. And it's not that we're going to be alone permanently. We're not going to stay in that state of loneliness. It's just we have to realize that that path of internalization, that path towards who we truly are, is a lonely path. We may be walking on that path, holding hands with someone, with very close to us people. However, the process is very internal. It takes place only on the level of this particular heart. Thence that sensation of loneliness. But that loneliness also has a very good quality to it. Because of that loneliness, the spirit, the soul, is constantly searching. It's, as it were, constantly moves. It's constantly vibrates. Because it's experiencing this kind of yielding of unsatisfaction.
And what about, taking our family and loved ones with us? Is that like, virtually impossible?
Well, obviously when we come out of our periods of silence, when we come out of our practices, we are fully interacting in this world. We are interacting with those we love, with those we share. So in that interaction, however little or however large feeling of joy, bliss, and beatitude that has been gained is being naturally, spontaneously shared. What has been filled up to its brim within is then naturally starts to spill over into the sphere of our everyday activity. So we cannot take those we love with us. We can only share, we can only be for them. I can see this process more in terms of becoming more tolerant to who we are, and as a result to become more tolerant to those who surround us. And that tolerance is not some kind of indifferent tolerance, that tolerance that ultimately leads to compassion, that tolerance that ultimately leads to understanding, and understanding leads to true love, not emotional sort of up and down, I love you, I hate you, but a true love that forgives and cares.
So would you say it's important that we all need that time alone?
Oh, absolutely. There is nothing more soothing, nothing more embalming for the soul than to spend time in solitude. And in fact, spiritual practice of silence, else known as mauna in Sanskrit, is precisely for that reason, because when we restrain from speech, we are completely internalized, and that is a true solitude. So those few moments when we spend alone, not just in our sleep, but spending time alone in the kind of spending time alone consciously, in full awareness that we savor that loneliness, we savor that sweetness of being alone, because spirit is alone essentially. It's out of loneliness that spirit has created this diverse world, just like this kind of metaphor for you. Otherwise, all there is spirit, all there is this oneness. But out of eagerness to experience itself in all its potentiality, this oneness creates diversity. And that diversity then often is overshadowed through multitude of experiences, and oneness is being lost to itself. So it has to find itself again. And that feeling of loneliness is like an echo of its original calling towards who you truly are.